Hi everybody, Dr. Joe here again. I wanted to spend a few moments with you quickly and remind you of some important things around these times of great challenge for certain people. I want you to understand that all of the work you've been doing in your meditations, whether you're doing a walking meditation or a seated meditation, or you're overcoming yourself, or you practice connecting to that infinite field of potentials where you'll experience wholeness. These times in particular are the times that you've been preparing for and all the work that you've been doing. And now it's time to live this work. And it's time to step out of fear and separation because you're only suggestible to information equal to the emotions that you experience. And that's what programs the autonomic nervous system into a particular destiny. So when everybody else is experiencing fear, that's the time to experience courage or to maintain courage. When everybody else is in scarcity and lack, that is the time to give. And we have to be able to demonstrate what it looks like to this world, so more and more people are no longer controlled by their environment and the circumstances that are outside of them. So think about it. All of your work and dedication is for you to sustain some type of change independent of the conditions in your environment, to literally be greater than your body and to be able to sustain that change for a period of time. And many people during a time where they experience survival will experience separation. And we know what the stress hormones do in survival. And you have been trained very well to open your hearts and to go against that primitive nervous system that keeps us in our animal nature. So step out of the common, step out of the natural and the normal, and become supernatural and demonstrate what it is to be that to the world. So you give people an opportunity to do the same.
We basically live in two states of mind. We live in survival, or we live in creation. Now, living in survival is living in stress. And stress is when your body's knocked out of homeostasis. Stress is when your body's knocked out of balance. The stress response is what your body innately does to return itself back to order. So you have different types of stressors. You have physical stress like injury, trauma, accidents, falls. You have chemical stress like bacterias and blood sugar levels and hormones and hangovers. And then you have emotional stress, family tragedies, second mortgages, single parenting, finances. And every one of those things begin to knock the brain and body out of balance, because when we perceive a threat or a stress in our external world, we turn on a nervous system called the fight or flight nervous system, and we mobilize enormous amounts of energy to prepare us for some event in our external world. Now, the problem with that is that all organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. Zebra gets chased by a lion, you're driving down the road in your car, you get cut off, the hormones of stress turn on, but 15-20 minutes later, you adapt and your body returns back to balance and you go to work, or the zebra goes back to grazing and the event is over. Human beings are a little different because we can turn on that stress response just by thought alone. We can begin to think about some future worst-case scenario in our life. And out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field, we're selecting the worst possible future based on the memory of the past. And that limited imagination and preparing ourselves for the event and bracing ourselves for that outcome begins to knock the body out of physiological balance just by thought alone. In other words, the body is the unconscious mind, begins to believe it's in that future event in the present moment, and we begin to create the stress response just by thought alone. We could also unfold a past bitter memory that's tattooed in the recesses of our gray matter. We can revisit that event over and over again, and we can produce the same chemistry in the brain and body as if the event occurred. Now, it's the redundancy of that process that begins to condition the body emotionally to become the mind. And when the body becomes the mind, that's called a habit. So 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, attitudes that function just like a subconscious computer program. So then the emotions of anger, aggression, frustration, hatred, judgment, fear, anxiety, insecurity, unworthiness, guilt, shame, sadness, pain, they're all derived from the hormones of stress. And 70% of the time or more, most people live in those emotional states. So when we're living by those emotional states, those chemicals endorse the ego to become selfish, self-involved, self-centered, self-indulgent, self-important, self-aggrandizing, self-pity. It's all about the self. Now, in survival, whether you're a frog, feline, or whether you're a human being, whether you're a lizard, when those chemicals are turned on, it's all about taking care of the body. So then, the moment we turn on the stress response, if we turn on the stress response and we can't turn it off, now we're headed for disease, because no organism can tolerate living in emergency mode for extended periods of time.
We've done an experiment. Just 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day with 120 people, trading resentment, frustration, fear for gratitude, appreciation, and thankfulness. Measuring their immune response, the chemical immunoglobulin A, your primary defense against bacteria, best flu shot you'll ever get, lives innately within you. Turns out when you're frustrated, when you're impatient, when you're fearful, the immune system dials down because you're in emergency. It's not, all your energy is going for some threat in your outer world. There's no energy in your inner world for growth and repair. But how do you turn that around? So then, as people begin to open their heart, can that chemical begin to elevate? 4 days, 50% change in the 120 people. Their IgA levels went up 50% in 4 days. That's, your body's immune system is now upregulating genes that are making proteins and immunoglobulins and antibodies that you don't need a flu shot. In other words, your inner state is greater than your outer world. So then, just by doing that, we now know that your immune system is going to get stronger. By the same means, take 120 people or 50 people and measure 7,500 gene regulations. Okay? In 4 days, 2 genes that suppress cancer growth and tumors are activated and upregulated. The genes that stimulate stem cells to go to damaged tissues and repair them, upregulated. The gene for oxidative balance is upregulated. Anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-neurodegenerative, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial. Just the body's naturally doing this. The gene for neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons in response to novel experiences and learning. This is 4 days. The gene switches on. The gene for more balance in the pituitary and the pancreas. The gene for the microtubules of the cells, the little fibers that respond to energy and frequency. So in 4 days, we now know that you can change your genetic destiny if you just practice the inner work. We have research to show that 60 days of meditation, 5 days a week, will lengthen your life. The telomeres, the little shoestrings on the end of your DNA, get longer. That means your biological age is changing. So we have the evidence now to show people what's possible. We have brain scans that are so outside of normal that when neuroscientists see them, they're blown away, because the amount of energy that's in the brain during this transcendental moment is hundreds of times outside of normal.
Wow.
I mean, you can't make your brain do that. Something is happening to you, and that person's having a transcendental moment. And we now know that we can predict it, and we now know that we can induce it.